It looks like we have our camera in position. Our diver is ready. Did you all learn some fun facts with our folks over by the touch tanks?
Yes.
Anybody want to share what they've learned so far? This was an interactive thing. I'm going to pinch and pry here. Well, my name is Stina. I'm with Harbor Wild Hatch. We actually have our whole team here tonight. We have Lindsay, our executive director, and Rachel back here. She's piloting the drone. She's our education director. And again, Stina, your science specialist. And I get to talk out loud, which has been so long since we've done an in-person program. So I might get really excited and have to okay, words are hard. Let's talk about all the cool things we're seeing tonight. And then as the buddy to the drone, wait, one more person. We even have our vice president, Howard, here from our board. So, as well as Alan and our lovely team volunteers rocking the touch tanks back there. So we're going to start the show with Alan here. And his lovely shore support, Brooke. So cheers to her too. There's a whole team here making this program happen. We're very excited. But Alan is our scuba diver, as you might have guessed. What are some clues that you've noticed that...
It was laundry day.
It was laundry day. Dress for the part here.
Right.
And so we always like to ask, I'm going to maybe give you the microphone too.
Oh, cool.
Because we like to ask our scuba diver how they do it in this cold. I think it's 46 degrees in the Puget Sound right now.
I'll give you an official number here. I'll give an official number once I get down there. But this is a nice dry suit. I'll just speak loud.
Okay, perfect.
This is a dry suit. It keeps me dry, which traps a layer of air down there. It's warm. The layer of air warms up, keeps me warm. It's almost like going skiing. The layers of thermal protection I have underneath it just trap all the air. It makes it real nice. My hands get a little cold. My head gets a little cold because those are wetsuit gloves and a hood. But other than that, I'm completely covered up.
Excellent. And some other things. So if we were to compare Alan to, say, a marine mammal, they have some adaptations to make it possible for them to be in the water. So I'm noticing in your hands you have some fins.
I have some big old fins.
What do those help you do?
Without these, I would not be able to move underwater with my little feetsies. There's just not enough, propulsion with my feet without these to push all of this around down there. So these are very important for a scuba diver.
Okay, so we've talked staying warm, we've talked moving. I think another really important component is breathing underwater. How do you do that?
That is a very key component. I have a hose that has a mouthpiece that I put in my mouth, and it is hooked to a tank in the back that has a whole bunch of air in it that allows me to stay underwater for half an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half, depending on how excited I get down there. But that's what allows me to breathe.
Very important. We like a breathing diver. How do you see underwater?
I see by wearing my mask. A lot of people have snorkeled, right? Same mask, I just don't have the snorkel part because I have the scuba tank part. And so that traps a little bit of air between the front of the mask and my eyes. That allows me to see underwater. Because you got to have air in front of your eyeballs to see clearly underwater. That's why when you open your eyes in the pool, it's all blurry. It's because you need that little bit of layer.
Awesome. And then about how much weight would you say all this gear is?
All of this weight together, probably an extra 60 to 80 pounds of total.
So it's going to be easy for Alan to sink, but how do you not just plummet like a rock while you're diving?
You want to turn my gas on?
I sure do.
Oh. All right. There you go. There you go. All right. So with this little bladder, I can fill it up and I can let it go, and that puts extra air, makes me buoyant and not buoyant.
Excellent.
That's how that works.
All right. Well, with that, our diver's buddy tonight is going to be the ROV, which I'm forgetting what's the ROV's name.
Little geek.
Yellow submarine. The little yellow submarine. Yes, the yellow submarine, which our lovely Rachel here will be piloting, going along with Alan as we explore underneath Jerisich dock tonight. And that will be live projected here. At times we will look at Alan and Alan.
So I might,
cool diver things.
I'll probably swim away and go find something cool and bring it back to show you guys.
Yeah.
And then when Rachel's done talking about it, she'll just steer away and I'll go find something else.
Perfect.
And come back. So, anything else from me?
I think that's it. So we're gonna give Alan a round of applause as he goes and gets some water.
I'll go get water.
And then yeah, we'll get the drone in. So now's a good time to find a comfy spot. Maybe ask a few more questions about the touch tanks over there. Yeah, do some jumping jacks if you're cold. You're welcome to crisscross applesauce in the front if that's comfortable to you. It's actually dry out, which I'm gonna pop over here. Yeah. Oh, Bella's coming in hot. Awesome. Any questions before we get started? And of course, I want to invite you, if you have any questions as we go along, definitely open to kind of have that fun conversation about what we're seeing under the water here. But any questions to kick it off? Or does anybody want to share their favorite sea creature? Want to maybe share what you hope we see while we're under the water here tonight? Oh yeah. I think one of the neatest things.
Why it might be hard to see things.
The what?
Why it might be hard to see.
Why it might be hard. Oh yeah.
Down there.
Ooh, we have a question here though. Oh, you hope. Oh, I bet we're gonna see a starfish for sure. You might hear me call a starfish a sea star, which I'm totally talking about the same thing. And we have a bunch of different species here in the Puget Sound, which the Puget Sound is just kind of a cool habitat. So it's a mix of freshwater and saltwater. There's over 10,000 rivers and streams that add that fresh water that mixes in with the saltwater of the Pacific Ocean, making the Puget Sound an estuary. And it's actually the second largest estuary in the United States. Which I'm curious, can anybody think of the first largest estuary?
The Mississippi Delta?
Kind of close. Bella knows. No. You might have a favorite sea creature you want to share. What's your favorite sea creature, Bella? Yes, an octopus. Well, Chesapeake Bay is the first largest estuary, but I'm going to personally be biased that the Puget Sound is cooler and probably literally colder. Again, we mentioned our diver is going down. The Puget Sound ranges between about 45 degrees in the wintertime to 55 degrees in the summer, so not a huge temperature change. Kind of cold year-round, but that nice cold water brings in a lot of nutrients, and all those nutrients bring in a lot of life, including the cool octopus that we are crisscrossing our fingers hoping we get to see. We have seen a GPO, which is a cool term for giant Pacific octopus, out here, as well as a little red octopus. So those are our fun 8-legged friends that are just so alien and weird and awesome. I feel like because we haven't done a Pier Into the Night in so long, our luck should be pretty good for seeing some cool stuff tonight. So we're definitely pretty excited. And yeah, so in seeing all the stuff that we are going to give you a little caveat that the visibility, especially at the surface, might be terrible. Something that happens is when it rains, all that water comes down to the Puget Sound, again making that nice estuary habitat. But that rainwater is going to pick up all sorts of stuff from our upland human areas and then mixes in with the sound. And then that just makes, there's usually what's called a halocline of that freshwater, saltwater mixing together, which makes it kind of awkward to see. And then all that storm water can also be full of like tannins and things from leaves. We'll hopefully get 5 to 10 feet down, and then it'll clear up. And of course, another thing our diver and our ROV has tonight are lights, because it is a night dive this evening. And so we'll need those lights to be able to see all the cool things. Okay?
All right, listen for the splash.
Ready?
Give a cheer.
Ready, go. 3, 2, 1. All right, divers in the water, folks. Which means the ROV is next. Our remote operating vehicle, which we've had lots of interesting tech problems with. So that's our other, everybody cross your fingers. Like, I think Rachel's done an incredible job figuring out all the things here. So we've got new cords, new battery. ready to rock and roll, I think. So yeah.
All right, Brooke, we're ready for you when you are.
Cool. Alright, so don't get seasick here. It was a little wobbly, but the drone is going in, and the lights are going on, and we are in the water. Welcome to the Puget Sound, and I have to say, usually we get to say, you know, thanks for coming to tonight's program. We at least can guarantee you're not going to get salty. But today we get to say you even get to stay dry while you're going underwater with us today. So whoever ordered the nice weather, thank you for that. You'll notice right off the bat, just kind of that particle debris in the water. So that's a lot of plankton. So that can be anything from the phytoplankton, which is more of the like plant floating drifters, to zooplankton, which is more animal drifters. Obviously hard to tell in this case, but if we were able to do, say, a plankton toe and look at it under the microscope, we could take a closer look and see if maybe it's a baby sea star, or a baby crab, or some diatoms, which if you haven't done so, our Harbor Wild Watch building is right across the park, the Scansy House. We do have a visitor center there, which has microscopes, so you can absolutely take a closer look at some of the cool stuff. So right now, we're just going down. So this is where I should have looked up some more jokes, because until we find some cool creatures, it's kind of an adventure.
We'll head to the piling.
To the piling. Perfect. Anywhere there's structure, that's a sure place to find life. And, oh, okay, this is really neat. So if you look kind of off this edge, you can really see the barnacles reaching out their feet. Barnacles are kind of an underappreciated crustacean that stick to rocks and docks, and even whales, depending on the species. So you can see that this piling is covered in barnacles, and when the tide is low, this dock actually sinks down with the lowering level of the water, and you can see those barnacles on the piling. And so when you're, you know, maybe the next time you're out walking on the dock, you can see where those barnacles are, and kind of give a good guess as to what the tide is doing. And they are a very hardy creature. They can stay out of the water for really long periods of time. So they're well adapted to that kind of high intertidal life. And so when that water changes, which here in the Puget Sound it does twice a day, there's 2 high tides and 2 low tides. So they have the adaptation to close up that shell and wait till the tide can come back. And so that little grasping we maybe caught a glimpse of was those barnacles reaching out their feet to eat their food, which is kind of a strange deal. So if you can imagine doing a headstand and then using your feet to eat some potato chips, that's kind of a strange thing to do, right? That's the life of the barnacle here. I'm wondering, that white blob kind of looks like... Alright, so Rachel, our master drone pilot here, is battling current, is battling dark visibility, but I'm gonna guess this little blob of white down here is more exciting than it looks. It looks like some sea slug eggs. So another creature you might find kind of tucked in between all of those barnacles is an animal called the barnacle-eating nudibranch, which is a tiny little sea slug about the size of a quarter. They're kind of brown and kind of splotchy. They've got a little feather butt poof that they use to breathe, and they eat the barnacles, which is fitting for why they're called the barnacle-eating nudibranch. And they lay those ribbony eggs in hard spots. So
Like little dilly doilies.
I love that. Rachel in the back, if you didn't hear what she said, they look like forbidden jelly beans. Don't eat the barnacle sea slugs. Yeah, we got a nice up close look at this piling. Some other things that were probably present are some mussels tucked in between those barnacles. That's, of course, you can see some shells in our touch tanks there. It's the black bivalve, so there's 2 shells that close up. I don't know, has anybody eaten mussels before? These are our powerhouse filter feeder in the Sound. Not only are they delicious, but they are also an awesome tool for studying water quality. So something we've had the privilege to partner with is the Mussel Watch program through Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And all throughout the Sound, folks put out these cages of mussels, and they sit out in the winter and they filter feed, and they also are catching whatever's in the water. So we kind of talked earlier about how when it rains, anything that hits the ground hits the Sound. And that's going to include, unfortunately, things like dog poop and maybe oil from your leaky car. I don't know, any other ideas? What else might that rain be picking up? Plastic, yeah. Maybe fertilizer from the lawn. Whatever it is that's on the ground is going to flow into the sound. And then those filter feeders, they don't really get to take a choice that I'm going to eat this lovely, delicious zooplankton instead of the dog poop or whatever it might be. So they're going to be collecting whatever they're eating through that filter feeding action. And then they get studied later to see what heavy metals their bodies have collected. And so results aren't out yet, but we're excited to see how we had a site right here in Austin Estuary. So we'll see how it did this year. I know it's historically been on the high levels of everything list, so you're kind of like, ooh, good job, mussels, for letting us know that maybe there's some work we can do in our community to make sure that the water hitting the ground and ending up in the sound is nice and clean. All right, hey, who's that? It's our scuba diver, and it looks like Alan found a crabby old red rock crab. Well, I thought it could be a graceful. I'm kind of waiting to see the pincher. I thought I caught a glimpse of black, but maybe I didn't. In any case, it's a crabby crab. We'll get hopefully a closer look. Actually, now I'm kind of seeing that purple. So there are a couple different species of crabs in the sound. The red rock crab has the black tips on its pinchers. The graceful crab is a more purpley color, really easy to consume, to confuse with the Dungeness crab. And Alan is, it's like he knows what he's doing or something. He has a male and a female crab. And so looking at that one, that's our female. She has the big broad belly flap that stretches across to her legs. And then if we could see the male again, this is where I wish I could talk to Alan. Alan, show me the crabs. The male has a skinny, pointy belly flap, and you can tell whether a crab is male or female on all the species, kind of with that little trick. So maybe next time you're at low tide, carefully rolling rocks over, if you see the little tiny short crabs, you can roll them over and peek at their belly. And if they have the big wide belly flap, they're a lady crab. And if they have a skinny pointy belly flap, they're a male. And sometimes for the females, she'll even have eggs in that belly flap. And it looks like she's holding on to a raspberry, but it's instead hundreds of little tiny crab eggs. And she'll let them free. That actually, okay, one of the coolest things we've seen at a program like this was one of the kelp crabs actually, like, I can't say it's giving birth, but like hatching eggs. And she kind of is just like squatting around, and just little tiny baby crabs are like flying from her body, which was, it was the miracle of life indeed. All right, trying to, is that some flowing red algae?
Yep, I thought it was a
I got kind of excited, yeah. It's a very sea sluggy looking red algae here. And Rachel says it's just red algae. Red algae is awesome. We love seaweed here. There's 3 different types. There's red, green, and brown. The red is, of course, red. The brown is brown, and the green is green. Unless the red is blue, or unless the red is green. It gets weird. Algae is like a mind blower. But that is definitely a nice red algae for us. So we'll try and keep it a little easy. Oh, something just went across the screen there.
right here somewhere.
Right here somewhere. Another thing that's kind of interesting is the lights can attract different organisms at night. So we've seen things like squid come by to check out the light. All right. Oh, okay, so on top of this rock, there's a sea slug called a Shaggy Mouse, Nudibranch. I wish it was an octopus, that would be cool. But this is a sea slug that does literally look like a little mouse that is soggy, or shaggy. And they're a really cool species. So we haven't seen them yet, but there's sea anemones in the sound. And the Shaggy Mouse is a sea anemone connoisseur. They love eating sea anemones, and what's so strange about them is they'll eat the stinging tentacles. So anemones have these kind of sticky fronds, and if you pet them, they'll stick. Oh, you saw a crab. Nice. And so they're stinging you when it like sticks to your hand, and that helps them defend themselves against predators, as well as mostly catch food is their main deal. But the sea slug will actually eat those stinging tentacles and then save those stingers inside its own body. And so then it in itself acts kind of like an anemone, using those stingers to help defend itself from predators. So I like to think of it like if I were to eat a bowl of bees for breakfast and then hold all the stingers in my fingers, and then if someone was being obnoxious, I could like sting them later just with a nice poke. A pretty cool adaptation, if I do say so. Does anybody feel like you're in like a Star Wars warp speed? A lot of baby shrimp in the water. Yeah. Do I have a question in the back?
What's all that stuff floating around?
That is a great question. What is all that stuff moving around? Hard to tell without looking at it under a microscope, but we could guess that there's things like baby crabs, baby sea stars, maybe some little shrimp. Back to a piling. We like pilings. I wonder, is there any way to take a look at maybe some tube worms? We go, or I guess we probably want to stay down with Alan, but he's hanging. Okay. We like to do this thing called belly biology, where we go down to the dock and we lay on our bellies and we look in the water, because it's first a safety thing. It's really hard to fall in the water if you're laying on your belly, and also it gets you a closer view of what's down there. But a lot of the stuff that you're seeing here tonight are things that you can observe by laying on the dock and taking a closer look. And I think that's just kind of I would almost give you a little homework to like take 5 minutes to do some belly biology and just notice all the things you see, because you might like take a look and you're like, okay, cool, barnacles. But then you watch a little bit longer and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a crab hiding in the barnacle. Thank you, crab, that was well timed. That's a nice kelp crab there. And a squiggly little worm, that was fun. This looks like, can anybody tell me, is it a male or female? It's got a skinny pointy belly flap. I'm like, what is swimming behind it?
Yeah, it looks like an arrow worm or something.
Yeah. So that nice skinny pointy belly flap lets me know this is a male kelp crab. Yeah.
I know what worm it is. It's not worm.
Nice. But this is a perfect look, just right under the dock here. But yeah, that right behind here, I am curious to know what is going on there. Rachel, if you have any
Oh, you
ideas.
know what? I think it's the reflection of the surface.
Oh, the reflection of the surface, folks. Very exciting, but it does, like, it's giving me, like, squid vibes, really. Like, I'm like, are you, that'd be cool.
Hey, there's my cable.
Hey, there's their cable. But yeah, it looks like we have some more of those mussels, so those black shells. Also, those kind of curly Q, swirly white things. Those are calcareous tube worms. And that's a nice tunicate there. So, lots of cool stuff to find under the dock.
Question.
Yeah. Oh yeah, thanks. It's hard to... What's up, Bella?
What kind of fish are in the water?
You saw a fish underwater?
No, I said what kind of fish
Oh, what kind of fish are underwater? Ooh, the Puget Sound has some really cool fish. My favorite is the six-gill shark. So you might be surprised to know that sharks are actually fish. They just have cartilage skeletons instead of bony skeletons. In the bony fish group, I really like rockfish. We do a lot of work trying to figure out how the baby rockfish are doing. I don't think we've ever seen a rockfish at one of these programs. I'm going to add that to my wish list here. Ooh, that is something. These long kind of tubes over there, those are some tube worms. Kind of different from the calcareous tube worms, the northern feather duster worm. They make
Bubbles.
bubbles. Okay, that makes sense. If you all kind of feel your fingernails, the tube worms make a tube that's out of a substance that's similar to your fingernails, and you can see those, they look like feather dusters, the little poofs. And if a predator comes by, like things love to eat worms, like the fish that Bella mentioned, and so they'll hide in their tube by just retracting a muscle, and they'll pull inside. That little feathery appendage is good for them for eating food out of the water, so they're another filter feeder. See, there's kind of a theme to a good way to be an animal in the Puget Sound is to just filter feed all the rich life that's in the water. It's a lot harder for animals in the tropics to do that because there's just less stuff in the water, less life, which then you get the nice like crystal clear visibility 100 feet away. But the life here, that kind of visibility trade-off works out well for us because we get a lot of cool creatures. There's Alan again. Yeah.
I like big fish.
Big fish are cool. I like big fish as well. I also like that big kelp crab we were seeing. Pretty cool. Something that's neat about the kelp crabs is they have very pointy toes, and that's a nice adaptation for them to crawl up those pilings, or as their name might suggest, slippery kelp. Here in the Puget Sound we have a lot of bull kelp, which is one of our awesome brown algae that makes cool kelp forests. In the Narrows, that's one of the few places where kelp is actually doing well, but sound-wide, bull kelp is definitely kind of on the decline, which is a bummer because it's a really important habitat. But I know there's a lot of cool groups doing a lot of good work to better understand how we can help make sure those kelp forests don't disappear. Trying to figure out what we're looking at here. You can see really Alan's light there. Like, there's a reason we call the Puget Sound the Emerald Sea, because of all that life in the water. For whatever reason, the way the light's reflecting, we're getting that nice green color, which is perfect. Oh, there's another kelp crab. Based off of the kind of those bulky pinchers, I would guess that this is another male here. Can also see they have that red color, so something that's neat about the color red is it's the first wavelength to be filtered out, so it's really as bright and beautiful as these red kelp crabs are. It's like the element of disguise, so they look, really can't see them, so the light here is giving us kind of a more true color, but they have really good camouflage underwater as soon as they're a couple feet down. Away from the light.
Ooh, that was a Polychaete worm.
Nice. Okay, that long thing swimming across the screen is a Polychaete. So these are free swimming worms, as well as there's, I don't know, there are, I feel like we just wrote a thing, like 10,000 species of Polychaete. There are so many Polychaetes, some of which you can only tell apart by looking at which way the bristles are pointing on the second segment behind the head, or, you know, it's beyond what I can identify, but, oh, I see a shrimp. So see those two glowing eyes? There's a touch tank version in the no touch tank of our shrimp over there. I love how its eyes glow with the light. So something that's really neat is when you're scuba diving or doing this program, you're like, boom, we can easily identify that shrimp. When there's lots of shrimp, it's a little eerie because you just see like this, like the floor is just glowing eyeballs all looking at you, and you're like, kind of feel a little judgmental shrimp there, but it's fine. An urchin? Okay, this is cool. This is a relative of the sea stars we have over in the tank. They're a spiny, calcium-covered little orb. if we were to pet this, it'd feel like petting toothpicks. I love petting urchins because if you kind of can get your finger in between their spines, one of their defense adaptations is to point spines towards danger. And so it feels like they're giving you a little hug because all those spines will kind of curl around your finger. So if you haven't ever gotten an urchin hug in your life, I highly recommend it. 10 out of 10 would do again. And these ones have very manageable spines.
There's... Why don't we have them in our touch tanks, Tina?
Oh, we don't have them in our touch tanks because they would make Rachel so sad. They would destroy the acrylic because they have 5 self-sharpening teeth, which is in a little, it's called the Aristotle's lantern for whatever reason, but that mouth part munches away seaweed, and then if it was in our touch tank, it would munch away the acrylic. So as cute and wonderful as they are, they don't get to be on display in at least our exhibit because we're, yeah, you should come visit our touch tanks at some time. Yeah, exactly. But there's also a species of urchin that's red and another that's purple, and their spines are a lot longer than the short little spines of that green urchin that we saw. It looks like some sort of swimming shrimp.
Oh, a little curl, yeah.
Or krill, yeah. All these little things are getting attracted to the light, I think. Checking it out. But those urchins have an interesting relationship with the kelp forests that we were mentioning. They, when their populations are too big because they don't have predators, so we can kind of think of that relationship between sea otters and urchins, which here in the Sound we have river otters, which are a different species than those sea otters, so we don't really get to see that unless it's a like really geographically confused sea otter. Every once in a while, I think, you know, maybe there's been reported sightings of them, but this is not really the place for them to go. But yeah, the otters eat the urchins, and that's a good relationship because then the urchins don't eat the kelp. But without otters, you might know that they have very luscious fur. I think it's 1 million hairs per square inch, which if you compare that to your head, we only have about 1,000 hairs per square inch. So like very dense fur, obviously a hot commodity in the fur trade. So they were extirpated, so almost went extinct from an area, and they're starting to come back in places like Alaska. But by removing that predator, that allows the urchins to thrive, and then a thriving population of urchin decimates kelp forests. And so without kelp forests, you lose a lot of other cool species. So having those top predators in place is a really key thing for maintaining these really biodiverse habitats. Obviously less ideal for the urchins who just want to like take over, but kind of those cool ecological relationships are fun to look at. We have some funky things floating around.
So many shrimp.
So many shrimp. Too many shrimp on the dance floor.
Oh, that was a Nudibranch, I think.
Like a swimming,
Zoom.
yeah. Why was it so fast?
Because I got caught in my stream.
Oh, gotcha.
I was reversing because he was like, woo!
Whee! Nice. Are we close to the bottom right now?
Oh, yes, this is the bottom.
Cool. Do you have a depth gauge on yours?
10.8 feet.
Okay, we're at 10.8 feet.
It's 50.3 degrees Fahrenheit.
50.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Balmy.
It's on the warm side.
I think it might be warmer in the water than it is up here. Quick, everybody, let's go. No. Evaporative cooling, y'all. That's a thing. Won't be too cold. Any questions while we're zooming through space again? Waiting for something cool to pop up? Oh, where are we right now,
First
Rachel?
piling. I'm trying not to get tangled between the pilings because then I have to ask my
Driver to rescue. This is a nice, like, ooh, like the backlit crab on the piling. I'm gonna guess another kelp crab. Although it kind of looks like it's missing a pincher. Or maybe we're seeing its butt. I don't know.
Yeah, we're looking at the butt end.
Okay, we're looking at the butt end. Something Alan is being really careful about at this site, it is just this silty, muddy bottom. And so you can see in picking that up, it just poof, clouds out.
It's a chocolate milk down.
Chocolate milk is a great description of what the visibility can be like, which is not great visibility. We can see some of that shell debris on the seafloor there too. Trying to decipher what Alan is showing us.
I know, I don't want to go too close to the bottom because if I get stuck in that mud, then it all goes in my rotors, and then I have to send my drone back for repair, and I don't want to do it. Not again.
What do you have, Alan?
I think it's a cock or a crab shell.
Oh, or a moon snail shell?
Or
What
a
is that?
cockle. It looks like maybe it's eaten.
Is there a sea star inside the shell?
Yeah, maybe.
This is part of the fun adventures, y'all. It's like, I know a lot of things, but we don't know everything. And then
Oh,
you're
yeah, it
kind of
looks
like,
a sea star on there.
Looks like a tank.
There it is.
okay, we have a baby sea star. Which this is great. So in 2013, sea star wasting started hitting up and down the west coast. And at one point, like over 20 different species of sea stars were hit by this disease that really, especially for the like 3 feet across sunflower star, totally decimated their populations. One of our sea stars in the tank, the mottled star, was another species that was hit pretty hard. Leather stars, for whatever reason, they are rock stars, they are fine. But some of those other sea star species really took a big hit. So seeing a tiny sea star like that makes me like really excited and hopeful that, you know, the sea stars are on a comeback. Looking at the sea star, you might not quite think of them as a terrifying top predator, but they are indeed at the top of many food webs in the sound. They eat in a really weird way, so they actually spit their stomach out of their mouth, which is underneath in the middle, and they digest, and then they'll put their stomach back inside and crawl on to the next delicious thing. You can imagine how romantic a sea star dinner date would be. I'm glad I'm not a sea star. But good stuff there. So yeah, tiny little sea stars, exciting to see. Kind of going back to that sunflower star, in 2020 is actually listed on the threatened list. I always forget ICUN.
Yep.
what jumble of letters. But yeah, the ICUN red list, and some of our community science data helped to list that species, as well as, I don't know, like 112 different other organizations. And that's where community science is amazing, because in big problems like sea star wasting syndrome that are from Baja, Mexico, all the way to Alaska, like a team of scientists in a lab, like there's not enough people to do all of that work. So getting the community involved in collecting that data, and being able to see like, wow, these sea stars are really disappearing from, you know, Baja to Alaska. Let's maybe make some changes or protect the species. So, yay, community scientists. I'm also like, okay, reflection in the corner. I was like, what is that glowing thing?
Yeah. That's above the water.
And then the red I was really hoping was going to be a California sea cucumber, but that's definitely the dock.
Sorry.
It's all good.
I'm trying to stay away from that piling.
Yeah. But I think some things that Harbor Wild Watch is looking forward to is doing more public beach walks this summer. So you can hopefully, you know, a little warmer, a nice low tide, go out and see some of these creatures. We're also going to be doing some more community science. So whether it's beach monitoring, including some of those sea star surveys, if that's something you want to be a part of, you can again sign up on our email list and stay up to date on when those things are happening. We would love to include you all, especially because like you being here tonight lets us know like, all right, you're the hardy ones, like you're troopers, because I don't know about you, it's cold. And so just want to give y'all a shout out for braving the weather.
All right, I think that's
For that. Okay, Alan, what do you got?
Okay, so I'll be just surfacing and taking it off.
The circle of light, that's an okay signal. So another thing that scuba divers have to do is be able to communicate, since you can't talk underwater. Sound doesn't travel how you would want it to. Divers use hand signals, and then at night they use light signals. So some really basic communication, like a circle on the ground is both a question and an answer. So Alan might be asking, okay, or pointing something out. You can signal direction. You can signal trouble. Or something's really cool. I need your attention. Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing you've tried to communicate underwater?
I feel like Rachel has to tell this story. So the weirdest thing I've tried to communicate underwater, we do monthly club dives for rockfish surveys, and me and my buddy were going along, and we saw a nice graceful crab hanging out, and she was in the position, and she was releasing eggs underwater, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I turned to my buddy, and I'm like pointing at the crab, is like giving birth, and they're just like, what? I have no, so like earlier, then we get out of the water, and they're like, what were you saying? Like, oh, you didn't catch crab having birth? Like, we'll work on it, but that was very funny to try and.
I would have known immediately.
Yeah, that's why we need to get Rachel in the water. We would be such good dive buddies. So, yeah, Bella.
I really like big fish that swim so far.
You like the swoops. Yeah. I will say it's been a pretty tame show right now. So this is where I was like, okay, cue the orcas. Is that, do we have power to do that? We've had a harbor seal swim by once. That was cool. This is kind of like one of those things where you like never really know what you're gonna see or what you're gonna get. So.
And I'm also being very careful.
And Rachel's being very careful.
Back, I don't want to
Yeah. But there are some, interesting little things swimming around here and there. Any other questions as we go along? The stars are out. Anybody need to do some warm-up jumping jacks? Who wants to stick their hands in the touch sticks? Ooh. A little light. I spy a scuba cylinder. The nice thing about these kind of dives is we know Alan will, Alan getting cold is kind of our limiting factor here because I know he's been down a long time. Yeah, and because this isn't a very deep dive site, kind of that depth is going to be another, depth and excitement is what kind of controls your breathing time. Like curious what. Yeah. Little fish zipping around.
We have found baby wolf eels here.
Ooh, baby wolf eels here, says Rachel. We've also, I think we saw some baby salmon in the water yesterday, which was cool. But these are clear. Fun stuff. Like, is that the ground? Are we looking up or are we looking down?
We're looking down, but this is the wall.
Oh, the wall. Oh, are we kind of by the sea? Okay. There is, I don't know if we're going to make it over tonight, but there is a storm drain we often like to point out. Again, as our kind of reminder that the actions we do up here do impact this awesome habitat and all the cool things that we get to see. So you can help make a sea star happy. Help those filter feeders, right? Have only delicious things to eat. Rockin' and rollin'. the storm drain's interesting too, because sometimes you get to see, like, especially if it's rained recently, you can see that, like, freshwater cloud coming out. What was that? Another thing we might see that's kind of floating are the molts of the barnacle. The barnacles shed the outer layer on their feet. And so sometimes you see those floating around in the water. There's all sorts of stuff in the water. It's super exciting. Another shout out to community science. Another thing that volunteers do monthly in the wintertime is check the water for fecal coliform. So swimming in poo is not for you. That's a good resource to check out. It is just a monthly snapshot, so we can't guarantee that anytime you're going out to play, because we know there's some hardcore folks out there. I don't know, any paddleboarders? Any kayakers? Any polar plungers? Yeah, okay, yeah, yes. Yeah, knowing that you're not swimming in sewage spills is a good feeling, I think. That's a nice little crab. That looks like a graceful crab. So we kind of mentioned that they are often confused with the Dungeness crab. Those are crab species that get bigger and are really popular for harvest. The graceful crabs stay smaller, and they also have like a funny little extra notch on their shell. So if you get a good close look at them, then you can know who's who. But I'm going to guess graceful crab because that's what we have a ton of here in Gig Harbor Bay. More of those fantastic barnacles. Is anybody going to try the barnacle challenge and try eating like a barnacle later? Do a headstand and eat with your feet? Ooh, what's the red? Oh, that looks like a towel. Oh my gosh. Okay, speaking of weird things we've found, trash comes up. We find some really interesting things because being that we're next to a dock, things fall out of pockets, things fall off of boats. My favorite was somebody found, or our scuba divers came up with a grill that had a fillet of salmon, like, on it. I was like, this, like, we could eat this. Pink flamingo ones, bicycles, there's strange things. But yeah. Oh, yeah, the crab. Anybody need to do a crab walk to warm up? Move side to side a little bit. Nice, that's a good looking crab. Looks like it has some big pinchers. I'm like, are you a red rock? Or are you a graceful?
Emma, let him up.
Excellent. How are we doing, Pilot Rachel? Making sure we're not caught. Yeah, the interesting thing about the drone here is that it is on a cable, so you kind of have to be careful where you're going. Alright, I'm like, what is... Alan has a surface marker buoy in his hand. Maybe. Oh yeah, that's the worst, is getting the cable caught on the diver.
When they don't know.
And then they don't know. Yeah. I wonder, oh, can we see... Okay, looking at Alan's computer, it looks like he's at 7 feet. Maybe? 37 degrees Fahrenheit? Is that what's happening? Whew! That's cold. That feels too cold. Yeah, so another thing with the freshwater is freshwater can be colder than the saltwater. And so when you first jump into the Puget Sound, there's that really cold freshwater layer, which is probably 37 degrees, according to Alan's thermometer on his dive computer there. And then as you go down, again, it could also get colder because as you get deeper, there's less light. So Puget Sound diving is just a cold endeavor in general. Okay, we made it to the wall. Yeah, walls are a good place for things like sculpin to hide. So those are little fish that like to be nice and sinky. They kind of are like an ambush predator, so they're just gonna hide and wait for something tasty to swim by, so they can swim and nab it. Like, what is that? Our storm pipe?
I mean, it is a storm pipe. It's the one.
That one's nice. So it's covered in some mussels there, as well as, of course, the barnacles. Lots of little shrimpies swimming around. Yeah, nice up close look at those mussels. And then, is that a fish? Yeah, it's like the one moving. Is that right here, or a shrimp? I think we have a different species of shrimp here. Probably something like a broken back. Its eyes weren't glowing, so it's hard to no. Wait for that reflection. Wee! Swinging around. Yeah, this is where, like having a light in the water, if you're at the dock at night and there's lights off boats in the water, just taking a pause to take a peek and see, ooh, what weird things are these lights attracting? Kind of getting a closer look at some of those is pretty fun. I am noticing, I think we're probably going to go ahead and wrap up here soon, you think?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to come to service.
Okay, cool.
He's probably a
Send the signal. Let's wrap this up. It's cold. But I guess before we conclude, is there any more questions about any of the things we've seen tonight? I think we might find something exciting right up here. Okay, well, if there's no questions from you, I have a question. Did you all learn something? Did you all have fun? Thank you so much for coming to Pier Into the Night. We have been so excited to get this program back up and going, so thank you for being here. Thank you, Rachel, for piloting the drone. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, volunteers. Thank you all for coming out in the cold and watching the show. We'll stick around and we're happy to answer questions, but definitely stay tuned, and we'll be posting more Harbor Wild Watch events on our social media, so things like Facebook is a good place to take a look, as well as that weekly Wild Side newsletter that you can sign up for. And yeah, so we'll see you all around. Thank you again so much.